So, uh, Perfect. Recording is started. If you have a cup of coffee or a beverage, let's jump in, take notes. But also, Drew will be sending out the recording and the slides and a handout after the presentation today in the next couple days as well. So you'll have that for you. So what we're going to cover today is what's your year-end number and what to do about it. Where are we at? You often see specifically farmers. I think we tease them a bit about going to buy equipment at the end of the year because they have their tax meeting at the beginning of December and then decide that they need to have a few more write-offs. With the big beautiful bill that was passed in July, we did move that bonus depreciation back up to 100%. So prior to that, the tax law was phasing that out. So it was going to be 40% for 2025, but now it's back up to 100%. So some of those asset purchases that you have become fully deductible in the year that you purchase them. There is kind of that funny window in between the new tax law, which took effect on January 17th when Trump took office. So there's just a little bit of timing. If you happen to buy that asset in that time frame, you're going to be held accountable to the past tax laws if it was prior to January 17th. And then we're going to also talk about reflection and refinement. So as we go into 2026, it's good to hit the ground running and to be ready for what does the next year mean for your organization and for you and what you want out of it, and as well as backing into or having that 3-year picture so you can back into your 1-year plan. All right, so the first thing that we're going to talk about today is your financial performance of your year. What did that look like? Your taxable income minus any bonus depreciation. And then this word that we've been using most recently is investable cash. Because what happens, and I don't think we have any financial planners on today, but this time of year you might be getting a email from your financial planner if you have one, or people saying, hey, you need to max out your 401k or do these things so that you can take the tax advantages of those opportunities in the year in which that they arise. Now, a caveat with that is making sure that you have investable cash to be able to do that. Because, yeah, of course, you can max out all those things and do that. But if you don't have the cash available, or it's going to create, you don't have the cash available to pay your taxes or the cash available to do the things that you're planning to do from an operations perspective, that investment portion is kind of probably something that we would need to have a conversation about. So, taxable income, the way to calculate this, the easiest way is EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization, and then minus out any new asset adds. So some of you guys are in the call or in that professional services, you're providing a service, so you don't have a lot of assets to your business. In my business, as a fractional CFO, the only asset that we have is we have the building that we're in, but we also have a vehicle that I use to drive. So that would be an asset. Now, I didn't buy a new one in this year. So when I show you my projection, you'll see that there wasn't a deduction there, but that's what you hear when you hear from car dealerships and stuff, or what the farmers are doing in December when they buy new vehicles, is they did this math, they realize they have taxable income. And because an asset can be financed, you can create a deduction that is might not mean a full cash outlay. So those are some things that we are going to talk about. So one before I go over to the worksheet, these are the things that you need to think about. So let's just say I did my tax projection, which we'll do in just a minute, and I have investable cash of $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever the number is. And then what order do I want to do it in? And this is totally up to you because everybody has different preferences on where they're going to spend their investable cash. So these are probably the top five ones that came to mind when I was thinking about that. Maxing out your retirement account. So depending on what you currently are doing, that could be a 401k, that could be an SEP, that could be a backdoor Roth that you could do. You also want to max out your HSA. Again, the HSA's tax advantages, that you don't pay tax on that dollars today, and then it's not taxable when it comes out using for medical, but those can go on for and ever and ever. And well, I guess I'm not quite that old. If I keep maxing it out for the next 25 years till I'm 65, I'm gonna have a nice kitty in there. But medical expenses are just continuing to increase, so just keeping that in mind. So, according to Instagram, I don't know if this is true, so please don't quote me on it. Those saunas that everybody's getting are HSA qualified. So I'll have to do a little bit more research in that and see if that's an option. Or for me, I potentially might get LASIK in 2026. So those are reasons for me to max out my HSA. The third thing there is buy assets. So again, teasing with the farmers buying stuff before year end, but also might be an opportunity for you if there's purchases that you were planning on making anyway in 2026. If you have a significant taxable income, maybe accelerating that purchase into 2025 here. Bonuses, so bonusing your team members if you've had a good fiscal year. Now, if you are an accrual-based taxpayer, you can actually accrue those bonuses and pay them out before February 15th. So you kind of have that 45-day window where you can make that calculation and actually pay it in the next fiscal year or in the next calendar year, but it still shows up from a taxable deduction standpoint on the 2025 return for your business, but it's not taxable to the employee till 2026. So that's one of the timing differences that happen with that. And then charitable giving. If you have somebody or a nonprofit that's close to your heart and you want that deduction to do that in that time frame too. So again, another caveat with the charitable giving is actually I'm not going to talk about it because I need to do a little bit more research because I think it might have moved off Schedule A. So Schedule A is if you itemize, which means you would only itemize if your items on the Schedule A, your itemized deductions. The biggest ones that are typically on there are your mortgage interest, your charitable giving, and any other state tax. If those numbers aren't above the standard deduction, you probably take the standard deduction. Not a reason not to give, but it's just an FYI that if you don't have a lot of mortgage interest, at least in the 2024 returns, the way it was prepared, that was not as beneficial. So I'll follow up on that so that Drew can put that in the summary too, whether that is still on Schedule A or if in the big beautiful bill it moved over to a different place on the reporting. All right, so now I'm going to exit here and I'm going to pull up a worksheet that I was working on among all the other things that I got going on here. So I'm going to blow this up. So this is basically a mini Sarah West tax projection. And I'm gonna walk you through some of the entities that I own and then how we kind of do this math. It ended up being more than I thought it was going to be when I first put this up together, but it'll still be good information. All right, so right here we have the entities that I own, and then the percentage of which I own them. And then for our records, it was easier to say is this cash or accrual because how you run the P&L in QuickBooks matters to make sure that I'm a cash-based taxpayer for Light Consulting, accrual-based taxpayer for Monarch Consulting, for example. So let's just make some assumptions. We're not quite to the end of the year yet. So some of these numbers are, well, all of the numbers are just rounded. So Light Consulting is a consulting organization. So currently we're projecting the EBITDA, the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization to be about 200,000. Now, that is all taxable. I don't have any new assets until I buy a car in the next 2 weeks. Now that I've done this, I might have to do that. So, thinking about that, just kidding. So, if you see me driving around in a fancier car, that mostly has to do that I don't want it to go to the government. So, that's approximately where we're going to end up from a net income perspective. And then I have these couple of entities that are real estate entities. Now, this isn't EBITDA because it's actually after depreciation, and I just guessed on these ones. We usually have little losses that come through in our real estate. Those are deductions. So those two, Brick Six, I'll have a loss on sold shares in 2025. And then Six Broadway, we have a special arrangement with the Bank of North Dakota, that interest rate buy down. So that is a rental building, but it does actually produce taxable income. So that one's a little bit different. Monarch Consulting, that one's in here. I'm 51% owner of that. So that feeds my tax return. Light Workforce Solutions, 25% owner of that. So that's feeding that. The Soda Shack. So those of you who follow me on Instagram would know that my daughter started a business in 2025 called the Soda Shack. In Minnesota, you can't own a business until you're 18. So she technically won't own that business until May 15th of 2026, when she turns 18. But we had some income in that, but we did buy a trailer and some other assets to that. So it ends up being a taxable loss for that. Now, whether I actually take this or not will be a question because I also would have to, because I'm going to sell her the business in 2026, would have some depreciation recapture in that. So then that. So basically, what to do your tax projection, you just take your entities that you have and the percentage of which you own it. If there's any new purchases in that, so if you're a construction company or a medical services company, those things that you bought that you put on the balance sheet, those need to be deducted here because of 100% bonus depreciation. Now, do you take 100% bonus? Well, we are of the stance, or I typically advise that you want to bring your tax liability as low as possible to zero or below, as long as because what we know today as the tax law is only what we know. The tax law can change every year, so if we know the parameters or the rules of engagement as of today, and we want to bring that income below zero, so that we hold on to our cash today, because that's what we know. We don't know what the future is going to hold. If any of you have a crystal ball, I would love access to that crystal ball so that I can plan those things. So when you think about, do I take bonus depreciation and pull all that assets that I've purchased in 2025 and pull my income negative? Our stance is that we want to defer as much tax as possible because we don't know what the future holds and if they're going to take those opportunities away from us. So that's our stance on that. So after adding up the earnings that we have and then times my percentages, this is technically it's going to be different than this, but the taxable income. I forgot to mention this is just my W-2 from Light Consulting because we're an S corp. So uh, and when you see these numbers, it just hurts your heart a little bit. So tax to the Fed, I just put 30% in there. This isn't quite the highest tax bracket. About between 450 and 500,000 is when you go into the highest tax bracket, which is 39. And because I'll have some deductions from more home mortgage insurance, anything for I have children, some of those deductions and stuff, I felt 30 was a safe estimate. And then being a resident of Minnesota still with that highest tax bracket there is 9.85%. If you live on the other side of the river here in the Fargo-Moorhead community, your North Dakota max rate is 1.7, I think. So quite a significant difference between that when I talk about that it costs a lot of money to live in Minnesota. This is why. And we if you want to know a number of when it matters, it's about $100,000 where it starts to make some bigger impact. I've paid in 82,000 so far. Estimated due would be 72. Now, your safe harbor, what safe harbor means is the minimum amount you can pay in and not incur any penalties. So safe harbor is minimum amount you pay in and not incur any penalties by the July 15th tax date, estimated tax date. What that number is 1.1 of your tax from the prior year. So you can see in this calculation, the tax that I paid in the prior year was 37,440 times 1.1. Okay, so my paid in number is higher than my safe harbor number. So what that says to me is Sarah doesn't have to make a January 15th estimated tax payment. I will have to make that payment by April 15th to not incur any interest or penalties. So the penalties is called failure to pay penalty, and they've really increased those rates. It used to be like not that scary to not pay because the penalty wasn't that high, but they have really cracked down on that. So encouraging people to pay as close to their estimated tax liability as possible by that April 15th date. So the big tax day is when I get to write a check. Okay. Now, that being said, what I just found out is that I don't have to write this yucky check on January 15th. So I get a few more months to hold on to that cash. Now, what does that mean? So then that's step one. How much am I going to owe and do I even have the cash to pay for it? And if I do have the cash, do I have any investable cash after taxes? Because January 15th is really like a month away. So that's step one is figuring out your tax liability and doing that safe harbor versus estimated tax payment due. Now, cash balance, this is what our cash balance is as of the end of November. And how I work my organization is all the entities outside of Light Consulting need to operate on their own cash balance. And we do have in our partnership agreements, we have a formula for distributions. And the formula is after 3 months of operating reserves, if you will, or cash in the bank, then the rest of it is distributable or investable is another word that I'm using. So in partnerships, and some people are more conservative, so they want 6 months. I'm comfortable with three because the engine is still moving. So 3 months of operating cash is where we want to be from a cash balance, and anything above and beyond that would be called what we're calling investable cash. Now, our operating expenses are about $90,000 a month. So 3 months would be 270. So this would say, Sarah, I know all these things sound attractive and fun, but your investable cash is below zero. So we're not going to take advantage of some of these other things. Now, can I still make that choice? You bet. I just know that my safety net is lower. So, other use of funds. So, first things or order, this is the order of the use of funds. The first thing is if you have a tax liability, again, they have upped their and penalties. So, I would encourage that you pay those things first. If you have a January 15th payment, or if you're pushing that and knowing that this bogey is going to hit in April, then just awareness of that. And then I would go to your retirement and HSA's account. So I'm going to throw in HSA here because the HSA max, and I have these notes in my other screen, but I don't have both screens up. Um, and I'll send that out in the email because I don't remember off the top of my head what that HSA max is. So I would max out your HSA. For me as an individual, it's like 4,000 something, and for a family, it's like 8,000. So if I had distributable income, knowing that I potentially am going to do LASIK next year and that costs like $5,000, that I want to put at least that in there and get as much tax benefit for that as possible. No need to pay with after-tax dollars for those things. And then I would go through these different options. So the Roth IRA is one of the most beneficial tax accounts that you can have. So if you don't have one, I would encourage you to get one. It is pretty low investment. Their investment rules are pretty low. So 75, 6,000 something, and then 7,500. And then there's a catch-up period if you're over 50. So it's not that we're not talking about $23,000 like your 401k potentially is. This is less than 10 that you can even put into a Roth. Why I have the words in here, backdoor Roth, is because how you do that is you invest in a regular IRA and then you pay the tax on it and you backdoor Roth it. So you kind of get this dual benefit of being a part of the deduction in a regular IRA, then you pay the tax on it and put it into a Roth because your taxable income, Roths have some rules around how much money you can make and whether or not you can actually contribute to it straight out. So that's the reason that I had that backdoor Roth piece in there. 401k, let's just say we max that out at, I think it's 27 something, but let's just say 23,000. This is for an individual 4,500. Backdoor Roth, let's say 7,500. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about, if your number is very different than mine, let's just say you have $500,000 in the bank, what do you do with this extra 230? Now, we're only accounting for, $35,000 in these three steps. The next thing that you want to have if you're a pretty liquid individual and you don't have any other real estate investments or things that you want to do there is a cash balance plan. So I would ask your financial advisor if you're in this case, in this situation where you have, over $200,000 to invest. I would, maybe it's even over $100,000 of investable income and you like the idea of investing in the market. I would ask them about the cash balance plan. So I just wanted to go through that because those are the steps that you should take. And I'll go back to the other screen, but wanted to show you real life examples and how we do this for our clients so that we can have really like tax first and then what are the other options that are out there to be able to invest your cash. Of course, there's always real estate and some other investments that have, but well, actually, the real estate agents would happy to have you close a deal here in the next 22 days. Realistically, probably not something that you can do unless it's on the market and you're a cash buyer. But if you are really leveraging real estate, you want to be thinking about, do I buy? If you have cash to do it, you could buy and then refinance after the first of the year. But to leverage your real estate, your cash in real estate, the play is to buy the real estate with a mortgage, put down, 25 or whatever percentage needs to be able to cash flow that thing. So then you get that that depreciation on that investable asset that is higher than your actual cash input. So that's the play there. Again, we're pretty tight to the end of the year deadline to make that happen. All right, so what's next? So now we just said, okay, I have a little bit of excess cash. These are the things that I can or should do with them. And then let's also just pause and take a minute because what December and these wintry days are a bonus and can do for us is give us an opportunity to stop, think about what do I want? Where do I want to be in 3 years, in 1 year, and really put together a beautiful picture and a 1 year plan. Because one of the things that I think that we don't do that well as business owners is to pause and to take that opportunity to do that, to ask yourself the questions of what is it that I want in my future. Why it's called the 3 year picture is really thinking about what does it actually look like? Not necessarily, I don't need, maybe you have a full performa for 3 years from now, but where's my company at physically, emotionally? And are we still on this hyper growth mode, or are we needing to reinvent ourselves in the next 3 years? Because the normal business bell curve cycle is we start and start up, and then at some point we hit a little bit of hyper growth, and then we level out, and then we need to reinvent or we die, right? And then it's just part of the business cycle that goes on. So we're knowing where you're at in that cycle and what you're looking for the next 3 years is pretty powerful and is intentional. So the key metrics that we look at as an organization, and we just had our Q4 offsite last week on Tuesday, and we run through this 3 year picture every quarter just to make sure. But once a year, we kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive into that 3 year picture. Our 2 day planning session happens in September, October in that Q3 area so that we can go into the next year into 2026 fully knowing what our 3 year picture looks like and finalizing our 1 year plan in that Q4. So what does that revenue look like? What is your net income? Again, because if we need to infuse tax strategies, knowing that ahead of time is good because again, we have 22 days. So there's only certain things that you can do in 22 days. Your customer demographics, are those going to shift and change? Who do you want to work with? Not just who will take you as a client or you'll take them as a client, but who do you want to work with? And then what does your team and accountability chart look like as we continue to focus on that? Even if those of you who followed us for a while notice that there's a little bit of a brand refresh, what we're focusing on in our next 3 years is how do we level up our services and not just be an accounting firm because we kind of fell into that a little bit. The needs The needs are there. By all means, the needs are there, but the expertise that we have in the room is maybe a little bit higher level than that. So shifting some of that revenue diversity in that means then we can back into what is our net income. And if we have a substantial net income in the 3-year picture, then we want to consider what does it look like to own our own real estate so that we can create an advantage of taking that real estate and depreciating it below zero and offset some of that income. Let's just say if we have 200,000 of net income dropping to the bottom line on a regular basis, and I can buy a $500,000 building and take some deductions, even if it's just $50,000 a year, pulling that down to 150 at those rates that I was talking about, that's $50,000 at 20%, is $10,000 in taxes, let's say, in there. And a lot of times, what you'll realize when you're renting or owning is owning actually isn't that much more expensive to rent if you can afford the down payment. And through the SBA and other programs, they're making those down payments a lot more affordable as well. So just keeping those things in mind. But if you're not running your 3-year picture from a income perspective, you're not going to know those things. You're going to run into, 6 months through 2027 and you'll be like, oh crap, we are killing it. How do I build a building in 6 months? You can't. It's not that easy. You can maybe buy one and then you can take the depreciation that way. The customer demographics touched on a little bit, like who do you want to work with? For us, and really thinking about what are those customers and clients that match our core values. One thing that we shifted this year is one of our core values. Our core values are love like Jesus, intentional living, was give grace. We changed it, help others, and then trust that anything is possible. And we changed our give grace one to because we felt like it was covered in love like Jesus, but we changed it to growth mindset because we want all of our clients and all of our teammates to have a growth mindset. Where you are today is not where you're going to be tomorrow, and we want you to be even better tomorrow than you are today. And really having that mindset is key to matching our personality styles on our team. And then that accountability chart, what does it look like to back? Let's just say we didn't choose this, but let's just say we said in 3 years we're going to have double the revenue. And some people's goals are that aggressive, and that is great, but you need to have the team to back it up. So in our particular case, we exchange time for money. So we are a service-based organization. So to increase our revenue significantly, we do have to increase our team size or our efficiencies. We have adopted some artificial intelligence to help with some of those things so that we can do more with the same. But also really thinking about what does that team look like. So one of the bottlenecks right now is me. I know there's some other business owners on this call today, and you probably have experienced from time to time being a bottleneck in the organization. And so we've talked about what does it look like to pull some of those activities off my plate and onto somebody else's? So this just in, our next hire will be somebody who can take some of those things off my plate and do some of those activities. So if you know any rock stars that are similar personality to me and expertise, so financial expertise, confident person, we'd love to meet them. So that's in our 3-year picture, 3-year plan. So pause, reflect, and refine. And why I put this on here again, this time of year, and this picture kind of dictates it almost perfectly, is so busy, so chaotic. January is our busiest month. We have over 200 entities to close in January. And it can just be a lot. So we're just coming off the holidays when we want to spend a little bit more time with our family, maybe get snowed in some of these days, pause, reflect, and refine, and really what that looked like. I know there's some people on the call today that are really good at that. Stephanie, I think you do a great job of always thinking about what's next, and I love that about you, and it's a good reminder for me too. And with Thanksgiving week, I took some time to think about what is next for our organization, and not like a complete shift. It's just refining some of those little things because sometimes we either fall into clients, fall into revenue streams, fall into things because the opportunity presented itself and we said yes, but does that actually make sense to what we want to be doing and spending our time doing? And now is really a good time to be able to do that. So here's the things that are important to reflect on. And I think I have actually a few different ones. So in systems and in customers and in team leadership and marketing and brand. So when it comes to operational systems, identify those bottlenecks. Hi, I am Sarah. I am the bottleneck at Light Consulting. It yeah, I am just the bottleneck so that it can be ended there. And other breakdowns are often attributed to me and my style and my calendar, to be honest. So we identified that and we have a plan in place to fix it, but not acknowledging it and just staying in the busy. If we would have just pushed right through that and not paused, probably wouldn't have that insight and acknowledge that so that we can't go make a plan to change it. Documenting key SOPs. So one thing that I want to pause and warn you about is don't SOP yourself to death. Because what can happen is that you have so many SOPs out there that people don't know like which SOP to use for what. So just be careful in that. But make sure that your key processes are documented. So in Traction or the EOS program, they'll talk about your top five processes. So whether that's the sales process, whether that's the client journey that they're going to experience from the moment that they call you to the end of that, that could be a full-fledged process. Just really focusing on those top five processes and being able to have those documented for yourself. Review software and cancel unused subscriptions. We did this as an organization. I also need to do it personally. I don't know how many things I sign up for $7 a month, and then 4 years later, I don't open that app anymore. So would encourage you during your what do we call that? Between Christmas and New Year's, sometimes there's just some downtime where we're rather than scrolling Instagram, scroll your bank account, highlight the ones that are being pulled out that no longer serve you so you can cancel those, keep those dollars in your pocket in 2026. I usually remember after they pull it out for them, and then I'm like, oh, I'll want to get a use out of this for one more month, and then I'll cancel, and then it never happens. So just bite the bullet, cancel a subscription that you're not seeing. Performance of vendors. Also, I would say, well, I think that's probably in the team part, but what are the vendors that you're using? Does it still make sense to use them in 2026? If you haven't already done this, I would encourage you to do so. And if you need to clarify any expectations, now just because they're not maybe meeting yours doesn't mean that the relationship still shouldn't still stay. It just might be clarifying those expectations. So, hey, remember when we first started in our relationship, you were going to do X. You haven't been doing that for a while. Can we just get back on that? And those just having those healthy conversations is really good. And then the last one here on the operations and system is fix anything only one person knows. So again, that tribal knowledge. If anybody wins the lottery and decides not to show up tomorrow, then where were they at in the process? What did they do? And making sure that that's written and documented somewhere. We really made a lot of progress this last year in our systems and operations. So we're using a software called Canopy. It is a accounting firm specific software, but we have task lists for all of our clients. So let's just say, well, Jade on our team started her maternity leave. She hasn't had baby yet, but she will be coming soon. And one of the things that comes with that is where are you at in the processes with all your clients? So those checklists are super helpful to just be able to pick that up and take the pressure off of her so she can focus on what she needs to focus on. We also did this customer and revenue review, so making sure that we talk about our customers. We go client by client and talk about how much time we've spent with them and does it make sense for us to stay where we're at or go where we are. We've had some clients say, well, what if we went hourly? And we would love for you to go hourly. And here's what the bill would have been for last year if we went that way. So just having those conversations, identifying best clients versus draining clients, and having those conversations with those people, having them internally as a team, but also then having those, because sometimes your less profitable clients, well, not sometimes, most of the time, your most draining clients end up eating into your profitability because they take a lot of your time and energy. And it might not just be phone time or troubleshooting time, but it can be energy whenever that person pops in your text or your email, and none of those people are on this call today, so I feel comfortable saying that it's just like, ah, shoot, another problem kind of thing. Review pricing for profitability. So as your operational costs continue to go up, making sure that you are charging market. So one thing that the probably the best thing I got out of my MBA was fully understanding how to price your product or service. So remembering that the same bottle of water that you buy at Costco costs 50 cents. If you were to buy it at a ball game, it might cost $1 or $2. If you buy it on an airplane or at the airport, it probably costs $8, right? So price is not have anything to do with your cost. You want to make sure that it's above your cost from a profitability standpoint, but making sure that you're pricing where the market allows you to be, not necessarily where those things. So doing a quick cost comparison with what are other organizations that do similar work to you charging, and making sure that you're either adding or subtracting to that based on how you do it. So a lot of people on the call probably have purchased a home at some point. So when you get purchased a home and you get a home appraisal, they look at market comparison and they say, well, this house sold for $200,000, but it had a two stall detached garage. So yours doesn't have that. So we're in a minus 20,000. So if you've ever read an appraisal, it's basically what you do when you're validating whether you're pricing correctly or not. The next one is assess retention and referrals. So making sure that what was your retention rate of clients and or customers, and were those regrettable or not regrettable? If they were regrettable, what could we do different in 2026 to retain them? And then list 3 revenue growth opportunities. So for us, we have a couple different groups that I'm involved in that we could probably poke at from revenue opportunities. And then also just getting really good with the clients we have is another piece for that. Team evaluations going into 2026. We just finished all of our performance evaluations. Well, I shouldn't say that. We haven't finished them all. They are either have happened or happening. That goes with compensation as well. Are they in alignment with market so that we make sure that our team members feel good about where they're at in their compensation? We update the org chart and job descriptions. One thing that really kind of threw us for a loop in 2026, 2025 was we opened the DL office. So we now have a split office where our teammates are here and teammates are there. We also had a couple people move out of town from a life perspective. So we have one in the cities, we have one in Oaks, we have one in Sabika. So now we can say we're like a um, 6 city office. No, I'm just kidding. But that working remote and doing that has affected our culture, and who's reporting to who probably plays into that. Needs to be a conversation as we continue to move through. What does it look like to have 2 offices, and a remote workforce? Because it just changed things. Identify skills and gaps in the hiring, and those skills that we've identified. That's part of our review process, which we can probably share one of our review forms with you if you wanted to see what that looks like. We run EOS, so we have get it, want it capacity as part of it, as well as alignment with core values and that people analyzer. And then we also say, okay, what does training the gap mean? So if you're here and we need you to be here, what does that look like to train the gap? And put together development plans and say, this is a course you can take, or we're going to spend some time with you on here or there. That's really what that looks like. Benefit renewals, easy in our company, but also a lot of companies have a lot of benefits. So then moving those through or addressing those with your administrator is good. At this time of year, if you haven't done it yet, you probably have like 6 days before they want it all back if you happen to have a January 1 renewal. So just making sure that that is getting done. Development plans for next level leaders. Again, we talked a little bit about making sure that you are training the gap. And then marketing and branding. So really thinking about where do you want to be, and does your brand and your marketing align with that? So one of the things that we consistently said here at Light is our marketing and branding is less about attracting new clients and more about creating a brand presence and for both potential clients so that when they go there, they see what we're about, but also about attracting top level talent. So our marketing and branding strategy is a little bit different than maybe some other people who are trying to increase their customer base at a high level. So I want you to think about what is that? What is the channel that you're doing? What is the performance you're getting from that channel? So just this morning, I had a client meeting and we are doing a development in Mapleton, and we were talking about what does that frequency look like. Now, we're not launching that marketing strategy until early February, but that'll sneak up on us if we take the 2 weeks out before Christmas. So we're really 6 weeks away from that launch. So reviewing those channels and the frequency is what really not from a didn't surprise me from a consumer of social, but it surprised me from a if we have to produce that, that's just a lot. So some of the things that were said is, a daily post or reel or story, 5 days a week that's out there, even maybe more than that, making sure that you're engaging, the level of engagement needs to, or the level of quality needs to increase, or it needs to match your customer base. So if you're looking for high-end customers, you should have high-end reels and interactions on social. If you're looking for just more, let's just say your energy drink that is sold at convenience stores, those are the types of things that you want to focus on is what are those people doing and where are they, and really doing that website refresh or any messaging that's needed, really getting crystal clear on what is that avatar that you are appealing to and where do they live on social, where do they live on the internet, and where do they live in the world, like where do they shop, where do they go, those types of things. And then clarify any brand differentiators that you need to as well. Strategies for next year. I'm gonna plug my computer in because it just went great. So that was all stuff in review, so reflecting on, but that really sets you up for being thoughtful and strategic in next year. So making sure that you have your revenue, your profit, and your cash flows ready to go. So one of the things that wasn't in my statement is I'm making a cash investment in April. So in our bigger cash plan, we have that deduction coming out. Ooh, looks like at the same time as taxes. So that doesn't feel real great as I say that out loud, but it's going to be a piece of it and we knew it was coming. So rather than worry about that on April 1, we're going to start worrying about it or have it out there right now so that we know that we're hoarding cash for a short period of time. Top three business priorities. So you'll see these top three twice. One thing that I've learned as I continue to age and continue to run these businesses is we don't need to move mountains a lot of times because if we put too much stuff out there, like I want to do this and this and this, and I have 10 things personally, professionally, all the things that I want to do, is that it's just not going to happen. And then I'm going to feel let down, and that doesn't work either. So, really defining your top three things that you want to move forward in 2026, both personally and professionally. And anything that I've learned, and Stephanie can probably speak to it way better than I can on personal health journey is not trying to bite off too much. So maybe just water intake is my goal, is one in my top three, spending time in my Bible every day and then moving my body every day. Maybe that's what the top three are. Doesn't need to be complicated, just need to be consistent. And then the other thing that I use often is the start, stop, delegate. So I've taught on the Eisenhower Matrix. So I believe that these go out to YouTube and we have a YouTube channel and there's in there is priority management. And in the Eisenhower Matrix, you organize everything by urgency and importance. And then there's these things that you do, things that you delegate, things that you plan for, and things that you just delete. Like this just actually don't shouldn't spend any time or energy doing those. So taking the time over the next, 22 days when you have a little bit of quiet time to think about what do I need to start doing? Because there's some things maybe that you have put to the back burner that actually need to go to the front burner. What are the things I need to stop doing, no longer serving me? And then what are some of the things that I can delegate to get off my plate to elevate that team member who maybe wants that opportunity to do something different. Those are some really great reflection activities that can come in the next 22 days as you're focusing on 2026. The biggest thing is that we're tired. My team's tired. Maybe your team's not tired, but our team is tired. 2025 felt like a roller coaster of a year. The economy shifting continuously, and us trying to do more with the same, and incorporating a lot of technologies and those type of things has been a lot. So making sure that you're celebrating. I know a lot of people, some people still do Christmas parties. We still do a Christmas party. Really, it's about getting together, saying thank you to our team members and their spouses. The spouses are super important because if you had a bad day at work, your spouse or your kids are the ones who actually feel it. And so celebrating those wins is super important. You might have people who say, I don't like to celebrate, but everybody really does like to celebrate. Recognize key team members, making sure that everybody is seen and heard, that they have the opportunity to share, and that you leave them a little note. So whether that's the week of Christmas, leaving them a little note saying how the value that they bring to the organization, how much you value them as a human being, all of that stuff. And then also sharing that year-end vision and gratitude. So how, if I work with your organization on the strategic side, what we talk about is the rhythm of the business. And one of those rhythms is, if not quarterly, but at least annually, gathering the team, however large. So we have some organizations that are 800 team members. That one particular gathers about 200 of the leadership team, those people who manage people, and brings them together to talk about the what did the year do, what does the next year do, and really that camaraderie that happens face to face is super important. So making sure that you're sharing that vision. People want to win, they want to be inspired, and you as a business owner have the opportunity to do that, or you as just a people leader have the opportunity to do that. So don't overlook that, making sure that that is a piece of it and it's super important. So I just did a lot of talking for about 50 minutes. I always pack these things full of some insights and things that are useful to me. Like I mentioned, we'll send out the video and the handout that kind of gives some more on those technical sides, some of those numbers and things that I didn't have at the top of my head for that.